Hey guys, Pedro here to tell you about the latest from Rotting Christ, Pro Christu, out May 24th on Season of Mist. The album has 10 tracks, 46 minutes in length, and this is the band's 14th full-length studio album. They are a Greek black metal band. A band that's celebrating 35 years of existence with this record, and I don't think they could have created an album that better represents the band, because this album, from a theme standpoint, from a sound standpoint, from an atmosphere standpoint, really connects with the legacy of the band, but at the same time it opens a few new doors to what the future could look like. An album that is surrounded by a theme, by a concept, and that theme concept is pagan kings that had to fight against the invading Christians. Christianity was overtaking the lands, it was overtaking the world, and pagan kings had to fight for their own existence, for their own survival, for their own beliefs. And this record really documents those struggles, those fights, that time period. Really interesting themes, really interesting concepts that allows this record to have incredible strength as far as the individual songs are concerned. They don't need one another in order to work. Each track works individually extremely well. But when you listen to this album, there's an incredible sense of continuity between it, and it enhances the overall experience, which is one that is very cinematic. This is a very cinematic, almost movie score style sounding album, still having a lot of atmosphere, still having a lot of darkness, but it pushes their experience as far as musicians and creating a record experience into a different plateau. Bringing that cinematic vibe really offers something quite different as far as Rotting Christ is concerned, but a great design that enhances it. Once it comes to the sound, I already said this album has that cinematic vibe, and with that cinematic vibe, you have a little bit of a brighter sound. It's a more open record. It's a record that doesn't feel as dark, it doesn't feel as dingy, it doesn't feel as menacing. It's not as much looking in as it is looking out, and that's where a lot of that brightness comes from. It's a record that connects really well with the Heretics, because there's a lot of elements on this record that were present on that album. It's just that Heretics open a few doors. This album opens doors, windows, garage door. It just becomes a much broader sounding record with some folk influences on the sound, on the vocals. The melodies on this record have a different impact. They're not as dark. It's a record that has a more melodic undertone. Even the overall atmosphere of the tracks is also more melodic. It's not a dark, necessarily atmospheric sounding album. It has a little bit more of this open-ended experience to it. The atmosphere travels a lot better throughout the tracks, and it doesn't feel enclosed in. So it's a record that still has the DNA of the band. It still has that darkness, still has some gothic moments in the sound, in the experience. It's still an album that's very driven by the overall guitar sound, but it definitely showcases that more cinematic side of the band, which becomes a much larger record, a much more open, brighter album all around. And going back to the guitars, I must say the guitar sound on this record is really interesting, because it has a lot of duality, it has a lot of dynamics. It's an album that guitar-wise you could feel the darker side of the band coming through at times with a little bit more thicker, darker sounding riffs, but you could also see a different side of the band coming through with a lot more melodic elements. There's certain tracks on this record that, with a different style of vocals, with a different style of drums, with perhaps a heavier guitar behind it, those melodies would fall into the melodic death metal scene or into a melodic death metal album absolutely perfect, because they carry a lot of melancholy. This is a very melancholic sounding album, and within that melancholy they were able to find some brightness, not some darkness. So it's a really interesting album, and the guitars play an incredible role, as they always do on this record, in order to create a lot of dynamics, a lot of movement, and make the songs super interesting and super engaging. Obviously, their big element of the sound is the drums. I felt like the drums on this record, they had some times where they were a little bit more overpowering, where they were a little bit heavier, but all around is an album that stays very consistent, where the drums offer substance to the sound. It makes the sound feel a little bit more together. It offers a little bit more texture to the way the record comes across, and there's even a few tracks where the drums offer a little bit of that folkiness, a little bit of that folky influence, in order to paint a much vivid picture, or a better picture of what the song is all about. Then once you get into the vocals, this album is super dynamic from that standpoint. A ton of choirs, ton of backing vocals, narrator style vocals, first person style vocals. Then obviously Saki's delivery with always that grit, with always that darkness. I would say the most black metal element of this record is coming from his vocals. He always has a way of infusing this darkness into the songs, and even tracks that feel very bright, that feel very melodic, almost like I said, touching on the melodic black metal, but also on the melodic death metal in terms of the melody sound, not necessarily everything that comes around it. His voice is always this coming back home and allowing the song to have that black metal influence into it. And not just because you have a lot of choirs and textures and backing vocals and narrator pieces and first person pieces, that doesn't take anything away from his incredible delivery and his incredible performance, which is a huge part of the experience of listening to a Rotting Christ album. This is overall an amazing record. It's a different record from Heretics, but it's still a phenomenal record. I feel like it's a little bit further apart from what Heretics did in terms of the DNA of the band, but it showcases that versatility in which they can go in a more cinematic and a more theatrical way and still have the Rotting Christ feel and the Rotting Christ vibe behind their music. It's definitely an album that celebrates 35 years because you could see the origins of the band, you can see the roots of the band, you can see everything that they have done, but you could also see what kind of band they are over those 35 years, which has been a band that's evolved with every single record, and this one is just another record that falls into that path of evolution. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with The Sixth Day. I love the repetition that this track offers. Very dark melodic riff, and that dark melodic riff really becomes the spinal cord of the song. Then you start to move into a more melodic death metal style chorus, not in terms of the drums and vocals, but in terms of the melodic riff. If you take that melodic riff out of this track, you could put that into an Insomnium song easily. It has a lot of the same textures, it has a lot of those same characteristics, it just doesn't have everything else around it. So it becomes something different, but you could still resonate with that specific genre. It's a track that also blends the vocals really well with everything that is going on, and those vocals add that dark, blackened atmosphere and vibe to the rest of the song. It enhances the sound, it enhances the atmosphere. The real gain from having that vocal style and that consistent vocal delivery is that you're able to add that black metal attitude just by having that vocal performance come in and disturb a little bit of the melancholy and the brightness that you can find in some spots of this song. Next you have Pix Lax Dax. This track starts off with a little bit of a folkier vibe. You see that coming in through the percussions, and that folkier vibe just peaks itself out in specific moments of the song, which is really nice. It's a different character. It adds character to the track, I should say. It's a track that has a great way of opening up both musically and vocally. The choirs give a lot of vibe, a lot of presence to the way this song comes across. And then when you infuse a little bit of heavier riffs into the song and add some more thickness into the track, you could see that Rotting Christ more traditional, grinding black metal atmospheric sound coming from the guitars, impacting the way the whole song moves and the way the whole song feels. It's a track that has a ton of layers. The guitars have great sound, great texture, a lot of guitar layers on this track as well, because you have a heavier side of the guitars, you have a more melancholic side of the guitars, you have a more melodic side of the guitars, you have a more driven side of the guitars. There's so much to digest guitar-wise on this track that really allows that element to stand out and feel like it's like there is a whole array of guitar players on this track doing different things and adding different elements. Still a song that changes and sees also a little bit more heaviness on the drum side, specifically in the chorus, that adds boost in the sound when you have those choirs coming in vocally to add a vocal boost to the track. So that allows the overall experience to be a little bit more balanced in that chorus, but really stand out. Last but not least, Pretty World, Pretty Dies. It opens up with a narrator, first-person style, vocals coming in, setting the tone, a little bit of a darker tone, if you will. and then you have the dark riffs coming in, and the song really ensues from that point on. It still has this big sound experience to it, but it definitely has a little bit of a darker underbelly that connects the track, that really impacts the song and gives it a very specific fingerprint. There are some textures within this song that lighten up the track, that give you a little bit more room to breathe. The choirs add incredible size to the song, not just vocally but overall. It really makes the song feel really big. And then you have very powerful guitar sound, a guitar sound that's also very dark and that connects extremely well with the most traditional Rotting Christ guitar sound, which is that more black metal driven, penetrating guitar riffs. This song is one of the tracks on this album that has the most of what you would consider the traditional guitar sound of the band. This is it, Rotting Christ, Pro Christu, out May 24th on Season of Mist. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Hit me up in the comment section. Looking forward to hear what you got to say, and I'll see you all at the next video. Take care.